when some people got all that money from the government, the COVID money, and then they got unemployment, they didn't want to work.
Comedian and 100 millionaire podcaster Joe Rogan is back in the news, this time for some comments he made about Fox News. And what I find most interesting, though, are the comments he made after the comments about Fox News. But I'm going to play this for you, and we will discuss it. And I'll show you some responses online from his Reddit page.
Today, the left has gone so fucking far left, so radical, that the right are the ones that are celebrating comedians and celebrating Chappelle. And they had my back through all the crazy shit that happened with me. It was Fox News that fucking had my back.
Would you ever think that they would be the ones to cape for you, like, 10 years ago?
I'm so liberal.
Yeah.
Like, I talk about it all the time. Like, I say I am not a conservative. I'm not conservative. But I am pro-Second Amendment, and I am a hunter, and I am a cage fighting commentator, and I drink and I smoke cigars, and I like to bow hunt.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in there that's like, hey,
crossover.
Yeah, but it's just being a human. But I'm a compassionate person, and I believe that there's I'll tell you what though, one thing that happened during this pandemic was it opened my eyes about human nature. Like, I used to be very pro universal basic income. My thought was, wouldn't it be great if you just had enough money so you could eat and you could pay your rent and then you could pursue what you wanted to? But the reality of human nature came fully into focus when I realized that when some people got all that money from the government, the COVID money, and then they got unemployment, they didn't want to work. I have a friend who has a restaurant. He could not get people to come back to work.
Yeah.
And so, one buddy of mine, a bartender told him, I can come back to work, but I can only work for 20 hours a week because that way I get unemployment. So he wouldn't work more than 20 hours a week so he could get free money. So he could have made more money, but he didn't want to because he didn't want to work. So he was getting that free money, and then my friend was like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
Like, okay. Like, and now he's always short-staffed, and it's a mess.
Yeah.
Like, you see a lot of people that that own businesses that have a hard time finding people work for them. So there's pros to that, right? The pros are people. It's a marketplace that favors the worker, so workers can ask for more money. So you're seeing a lot of places like bars and restaurants and stuff that have to pay more money per hour, which I guess is good as long as the restaurant can stay open.
All right, so I will get to some reactions online and, of course, my thoughts on all this. But first, I want to point out why I'm even covering this, because sometimes there's comments that are like, why do you even cover Joe Rogan? He has the #1 podcast in the world. He has an influence on people. He is essentially mainstream media. He's being paid by Spotify to be exclusive to their platform. This has an impact. What he says has an impact. Now, he may not carry himself that way. He may not realize that what he says matters and has influence on people, but it does. So it's important to address this, especially if he's saying something that is just a little ridiculous. So first, you're on the Fox News point. Yeah, I mean, of course they're going to defend you when you were spreading COVID misinformation. So that's why they were defending you. Now, to be fair, it wasn't just Fox News. Jon Stewart defended him as well, and I covered this, defended Joe Rogan amid his COVID-19 misinformation controversy. And Stewart defended him essentially saying that Rogan is not a bad actor. He's someone that you can converse with, that you can, influence, change his mind. So he shouldn't be attacked in the same way that, say, Tucker Carlson is, who is knowingly putting out bad information. And I agree with that. As I've discussed before, I watched Rogan for years. And maybe you can say I have a bias here because I did that, but I also have more information. I'm more familiar with who he is, his content, the kind of person he is. And he is not spreading lies on purpose, but he is definitely influenced by the people around him, which is why his show has become a lot more right-wing since having on more right-wing guests over the past several years. So when that is the company you surround yourself with, that is going to be the garbage that you are spewing and focusing on. So while Rogan may view himself as progressive, and I'm sure he still holds many of those, more progressive positions, like supporting universal health care, like supporting a woman's right to choose, that does not tend to be the focus of his discussions with his guests. And that's because his guests lean heavily right wing. Now, yes, you can point out, oh, but he had on Kyle Kalinske, or he had on who else? I'm forgetting her name now, but there's one other person. Empire Files. You know what? I feel bad that I forget her name, so I'm looking it up right now. But he had on Abby Martin, of course. Sorry, I blank on names, but those are two people that I could think that are actually on the left that have at least tried to, influence Rogan a little bit. But guests like that are so very few and far between. And yes, he had on Cornel West once, like 3 years ago, had on Bernie Sanders once. But in terms of just the regular show, who he normally has on, it tends not to be people that are politically left-leaning. So even if he personally feels, and this is what I discuss all the time about people that have influence in media, I don't care how you personally feel about an issue. How do you use your platform? If you say, oh, I support Medicare for all, but you spend your entire time attacking the only people in Congress who are trying to get Medicare for all, then why does it matter if you personally claim to believe in Medicare for all if you're not doing anything to actually support the people trying to get it passed? So it doesn't matter what you personally believe as somebody in media. It matters how you use your platform. And the way Rogan uses his platform is to spread a lot of, at least recently, lies about COVID-19 that I don't think he was aware how full of shit he was saying that stuff. But again, influenced by those around him, influenced by, the one kook out of the 100 scientists that say, yes, the vaccines are good. This is an issue. So you have to be aware of how you use your platform, especially when you are the biggest podcaster in the entire world. Now, on the comments about UBI versus unemployment, he conflates the two here because he claims that, and by the way, UBI, I can take or leave. I don't think it's the end all be all. I don't think it's going to solve, the world's problems. But the intent of it is that it is a universal payment that goes out to everybody regardless of their working situation. He conflates the influence or the impact that would have with unemployment, which goes away if you start working. So, and by the way, why would you work double the hours for less pay than you would get through unemployment, which by the way, unemployment you pay into as well through your taxes. Like, it doesn't make you lazy to be logical. If you're logically looking at the situation and thinking, hey, I can make maybe a little less money through unemployment, but I'd be making, less money and having a lot more free time, then why wouldn't I do that instead? So, to try and conflate UBI with unemployment is just, it's not logical. And to get to some reactions from that on his Reddit page, which as I've discussed in a previous video, tends to be hypercritical of him now, especially, or in particular, when it comes to issues of the working class. But here are some reactions online. So this person says, if you've ever worked hospitality, you know the reason people don't want to work these jobs is because they suck / the managers are terrible / you work incredibly hard for little money. Every job I've worked for the past year has been understaffed, and all the staff know exactly why. And actually, the response here, I want to reply to as well. He says, note that his friend was an employer, not an employee. This is something I've noticed in several comments now in Rogan's commentary around working class issues. My last video on Rogan was the exact same thing. Rogan quoted a friend of his who runs a company, and people in that company, employees, some of them, I guess, wanted a day off, a mental health day, and he was making fun of that. Again, this situation, his friend runs a restaurant, and then now they work less hours. Rogan needs more people around him who don't own companies. Maybe if he had that, he would be a little more connected to the average person. But because of the company he keeps now as a 100 millionaire, his perspective on issues is going to be a lot different. So again, this is somebody that I think is incredibly influenced by the company he keeps. And you see that in how his commentary has changed over the years, or at least his focus definitely has changed over the years. Another reaction here from Cheap Drinks says he also doesn't seem to grasp why someone would rather work for 20 hours than get unemployment on top, rather than work 40 hours to get just a little bit extra money at the end of the week for working twice as many hours, as if that concept is completely crazy and equates to that person being a lazy bum. And this person goes on to say, it would be like Spotify offering Joe $100 million for the amount of content he creates now, then offering him an extra $5 million if he creates 5 times as many episodes, than someone calling him lazy and unmotivated to work if he took the $100 million deal instead of the $105 million deal. Basically pointing out here, why would you work double the hours for just a little bit more pay when you can simply take unemployment, and sure, you're going to get less through unemployment, but you have a lot more free time. People work to live. Most people. That's what they have to do. Rogan has a very easy job right now. Now, I know it takes a certain talent to be able to do what he does. I'm not saying, he doesn't work at all. I'm sure there's work involved there. But he sits down and gets to talk to people for, 3 hours, 3 times a week. It isn't the toughest job in the world. Like, you have to be able to understand, put yourself in that person's shoes. Why would they not take that option? But again, it's because his friend runs the restaurant. That's who he is sympathizing with here. And one last comment. I'd also like to mention the insane amount of wage theft in the hospitality industry. I used to work for someone who has refused to pay any overtime for at least 15 years, and he continues to get away with it. Normal people go to jail when they steal. This dude bought a racehorse. So this, again, shows you that there is oftentimes a very different criminal justice system for those with means, those that are capital owners, those that have a lot of money, those that own companies, than there is for the rest of society. So one last comment here, and this is kind of an aside, but I think it's worth mentioning. People criticize people like Kyle Kalinske for not criticizing Joe Rogan enough as somebody who has been on his show and still goes on his show. I think that's misguided. Rogan, because I think Rogan is somebody who is malleable, and even put that aside, he has a massive audience. If you have access to that audience and can hopefully help to pull some people out of a right-wing hole, maybe hope to educate some people, if you're already close to him, I think it makes sense to try and maintain that. Now, that doesn't mean to come out to defend him when he doesn't need to be defended, but just to point out that don't expect people who are very close to influential people to completely eviscerate them if there is a benefit for them to be within that person's circle. This also, by the way, applies to someone like, at least up to this point, Bernie Sanders, who you can criticize him for not, going after Joe Biden enough, but I think he took the same sort of idea there, where by being closer to Joe, by being within his inner circle, his hope was to influence him. Now, I think at this point, as I've covered, Bernie has sort of changed his mind on that, and he has been willing to go after Biden a little tougher more recently, because I think he's realized his limit in terms of his influence on Biden, being within his circle. But when you have access to a massive audience, I think it's perfectly fine to have that person maybe be their approach a little different to Rogan than compared to someone like me or someone, other people who go after Rogan a lot tougher than I do. So I think that's fine. It's fine to have different approaches here, depending on who you are, depending on what the audience is, depending on who your audience is, and understand that we all play a role, and it doesn't make sense for all of us to have the exact same commentary all the time on every single issue. Even if we have similar positions, there is different influences, different reasons why people say or do different things depending on the context.